The author of the book of Luke had no knowledge of what was going on here, had no access to eyewitness accounts, nothing.
Caller, you're live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Rabbi, this is Joe from Arizona. I thank you so much for what you do. I really do appreciate it. And my question is about Acts. In the book of Acts, there's a mistake, a pretty big one, claiming that the Machpelah is in Nablus, the modern city of Nablus, when we all know it's in Hebron. And what makes me even more confused about this is this common knowledge, and Herod already built the Machpelah before this was written, so it was common knowledge even at the time where the patriarchs were buried. But it's claiming it's in Nablus or Shem. How do Christians read this and think that this is divine when there's a clear mistake here?
So, William, when you're in Israel, I'm going to take you to Hebron. Hebron is in Judea, and that's where the Moras HaMachpelah is. That's where the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs are buried. It's a very significant place. It's the second holiest place in Judaism, the second holiest city. It's really where everything all began. And just so you know where everything is situated, so imagine from the land of Israel, right? So this is not exactly, but Jerusalem is like somewhere in the middle. It's kind of like the belly button. It's not, but let's just say it is. It's kind of in the middle. Judea is Yerushalayim and south. By car, Hebron is, let's say, if there were no traffic, I don't know, 30 minutes away, south, just straight south. You've passed Bethlehem, which is only 10 minutes south of Jerusalem. So it's in the heart of Judea. That's where Hebron is. That's where the Moras HaMachpelah is. And as you correctly pointed out, the book of Acts has this all wrong. And rather that the tomb of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob being in Hebron, where it is, and people visit, I don't know, thousands of people a day, I don't know, it's huge. And Herod thought it so important that he built a tomb, around the caves. So there's this, I don't know if this is correct, but it certainly is one of the oldest buildings in continual use in the world. So Herod built the outer structure of the tomb of the patriarchs, and it's the same stone as the Western Wall. So it's very plain, okay? So that's in Hebron. That's south. In the Christian Bible, the author of the book of Acts, Luke, gets this completely wrong. This is mind-blowing. This is like saying that Grant's tomb is in San Francisco. This is like saying that the Empire State Building is in Miami Beach. This is the most striking monument in Israel, besides the Temple Mount. It says that it's in Shechem, which is, they call it today Nablus. Shechem is in the north. It's not a misapprehension. It means they're totally unfamiliar with the land of Israel. Now, why would this be significant? It's extremely significant because Christians claim that Luke is a well-studied historian that really diligently gathered information from eyewitnesses. And that's how the book of Luke begins. This is why it's so important. Those of you who are familiar with this know that I'm not strawmanning this. Christians claim that while Luke was not a disciple, they claim that he was a companion of Paul. But why then could we rely on Luke? Because he was a thorough historian. And you're asking, like, how do you know? He talks about sycamore trees. I'm not kidding. Maybe a few of you watching me now, so probably most of you are not familiar with this stuff. Those of you who really study know I'm not making this up. It's so convoluted. To identify the tomb of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to be wrong about that, and again, as you, the caller, points out, this is a really well-known place. It's so well-known that Herod the Great built this. That's the same person who rebuilt the Second Temple. The Western Wall was built by Herod the Great. And they didn't call him Herod the Great because he was a great, terrific person. He was a great builder. These are his most famous projects, but actually there are quite a number of them. Herod the Great, I mean, he built Masada as well. Masada, where the final rebellion played itself out in 73. That was also built by Herod as a palace and a runaway palace for him. I don't want to go off the rails here. So what does this mean? That this is not a numbers issue, okay? This is not how many women were at the tomb. Were there 2, as Matthew would have us believe? Were there 3? Were there more than 4, as Luke, as John? Forget that. Really, Christians I think they're torturous and very thin, but they do have answers to it, and they're entitled to it. This is outrageous. Shechem is a very well-known place. It appears very frequently in Tanakh, in the book of Genesis. It's also famous because that's where the burial place of Joseph is. So Shechem is there. And when people say the author of Luke was a tremendous historian, and he knew this and he knew that, and he knew there was this kind of tree, and he knew there was this kind of coinage, currency, that's like insane. That's why this is very, very important. So the reason we know, I want just one point here. The Christian Bible is not the Word of God, and one should never look to it for edification because its core teachings are opposed by the Hebrew Bible, not because there are mistakes. Be very clear here. But these colossal errors, and this area of Acts chapter 7 is loaded with mistakes. Some of the mistakes in Acts 7 are actually older mistakes that the author of Acts, that Luke inherited and regurgitated, like how many souls went to Egypt. So it is 70, but that's just a mistake that actually predates the book of Acts, and Acts has it as 75. So they're just taking it from sources that are mistaken. But this, this is really, to say that that 9/11 occurred in Fort Lauderdale, and that's where the attack was, that's like so off that whoever wrote the book of Luke had no access to eyewitness accounts, nothing. And rather he collected his information from numerous sources. We know those sources. He took from the book of Mark. He took from another source that's completely unique to Luke. He took from a source that Matthew was aware of and Mark was not aware of. It's called a Q source. That's where his sources were, not eyewitness accounts, as he claims. That's what's very critical. So thank you for that question. I mean, Shechem is way up in the north. Hebron is in the south. That means if I'm standing in Jerusalem, it's in the south. If I'm in Eilat, so they're both north. But if you're in Jerusalem, just look at a map of Israel, okay? So Jerusalem's right there in the middle. Just go south. You'll find Hebron. You're going to make a line. It'll go right through Beis Lechem. You want to find Shechem, go straight up north. Just two opposite directions. The author of the book of Luke had no knowledge of what was going on here and collected and put it in there. He's advertising that he doesn't have information from an eyewitness. That would be impossible. Thank you for your question.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא ועת נעשה בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה